Okay, so I saw that this was an hour class, and for me, um, I have some things I want to say, and I will make sure that I cover all those things. And then I'm going to leave when people stop asking me questions. So I really want to make sure that this is as interactive as it possibly could be. So super quick about me. I've been appraising like 30 years. If you've ever heard me speak before, I say this all the time. I'm kind of not good at anything else, so I just keep doing this over and over again. Um, and the last 8, 9 months or wherever we're at right now, really have been the most challenging time in my career to be an appraiser. The market's moving incredibly fast, and appraising is easiest when we have stability, and it's most difficult when we're trending in a really rapid way. And just a few numbers just to kind of illustrate what we've been going through, and I'm sure you guys lived through it, so probably no surprise. But I basically run numbers every month to kind of get a big picture analysis of where things are going. And in March, so the other thing I want to say is sales clearly are a lagging indicator because a December closing really a November contract. So we always have to kind of keep that in mind. And while February, I think, was the last normal month we had, I look at March as the baseline of when things were normal before, our worlds all kind of changed. And the average sales price for March in ARMLS was about $378,000. We had about 8,800 closings. In April, that dropped 2% to like 369,000. May is what I'm going to call kind of rock bottom. It's the front end of that V-shaped recovery we talk about. Average sales price dropped to $354,000. So we had a 6% drop in probably values, you could say, in a 2-month period. So that got kind of crazy. And then June hit, and we started a recovery way faster than I thought we would. Went June average sales price 369,000, July 394,000, in August 402,000, et cetera, et cetera. I ran December numbers this morning. Average sales price is up to $432,000, which it wouldn't surprise me if that's the highest average sales price we've had in Arizona Regional MLS on a monthly basis. So in a 7-month period, comparing the bottom to the top, average sales prices increased by 22%. That is basically, that's a little over 3% a month. I've seen that like for a 60-day period, but for a 7-month period, that is an incredible rate of appreciation. The other thing about that, when I run my numbers and when I'm preparing to speak at a class, I run number of active listings, because really what is normally the driving force behind appreciation is diminishment of supply. And I was seeing 7,000, 7,500 listings had become kind of commonplace, which is historically a very low number. But I ran active listings this morning and we were under 5,900 active listings. That is a crazy shortage. And again, going back to my college econ class, when there is a lack of supply, the demand goes up incrementally for the listings that are on the market. So, and then we have over 10,000 homes under contract, which again just shows how fast this market is turning over. Well, so what does that mean to the appraisal industry? What it probably means is appraisers are having trouble keeping up with what's been going on here. And I know that's the case because when the market's humming at a more traditional pace, nobody calls and asks to talk to me, okay? When the market is normal, it's easy for the appraisers to use historic data and say what a house is worth today. And so subsequently, it's uncommon to find appraised values below contract prices. But when we're in a market going up like this, all of a sudden appraisers are looking at this historic data and it's just not supporting the market conditions currently. And so you are running, I'm guessing, across a bunch of scenarios where appraised values are falling in below contract prices. And I'm getting angry realtor calls almost daily saying, "Oh, you know, why are appraisers sabotaging this market?" And again, the reality is appraisers probably have never experienced a 3% a month appreciation before for this long a period of time, and it's just hard for us to keep up. So I think I have kind of my toolbox, I call it, things that I think every realtor should be doing to be as impactful as possible from an appraisal perspective. And I think it's important that we kind of go through that now because I think appraisers need help. I really do. And so to me, I just want to help you do the best job for your clients. I really do. And I think part of that is most clients probably could use your help, wrapping your arms around them and just walking them through the entire process from start to finish. Some probably don't need that from you, but others do. And I think the most impactful you can be from an appraisal perspective is meeting these appraisers at the inspection and providing them information. Okay. So let's talk about what I think belongs in that package. I think that every package that you provide to the appraiser should include a copy of the purchase contract. Okay. I just ran across this situation the other day where I was not provided a copy of an addendum that changed the sales price. I didn't know it. I appraised it. The good news for me, and I think the parties to this transaction, is I'm not one of those appraisers who just tries to hit a contract price. I appraise the house for what I think it's worth. And if I think the contract price is $470,000, I think the house is worth $475,000, I'm going to appraise it at $475,000. And in this case, it worked for me because I thought it was an escrow of $470,000 and actually was an escrow at $473,000. I had already appraised it at 475, so I didn't have to go back and take another look at the appraisal. But this happens fairly regularly where the appraiser either isn't provided the final counter offer or just simply misses it. It was provided along with a bunch of other documentation. The appraiser misses it. He thinks we're an escrow at $500,000, appraises it at $500,000. You've all seen that, where magically the appraised value and contract price are exactly the same. Then later the underwriter says, hey, the purchase price is wrong. And it's really hard to get the appraiser to change that value once they've already signed it. So do yourself a favor, give the appraiser a copy of the purchase contract. I would staple the final counter offer on top and I would highlight the final sales price. I just don't want you to ever lose a deal because the appraiser was not aware of what the final sales price is. Okay, so that's the first thing I would do. Second thing I think I would do is, in this market, most segments, not every place and every price point, but most segments are appreciating at a very significant monthly pace. And I think that it's in your best interest to provide some sort of graph or some sort of illustration to show how your market has appreciated over, say, the last 6 or 8 months. Okay. You need to decide how best you can do that and communicate that in an effective fashion. Maybe you're going to give them the Cromford report for your area. I don't think that's the best way to do that. I think that's good supplemental information. What I think you should do is say, here are the boundaries for this neighborhood, and I'm going to run monthly sales figures for 8 months. Here's the average sales price. Here's the average price per square foot for December, for November, October, and so on. And the reason you do that is you're trying to make sure the appraiser is aware um, how this market is escalating. Okay, and to do it in a fashion that provides some documentation and illustration, I think is helpful to you. So I recommend you do that. And along with that, I think that you should maybe write a paragraph describing how long you've been on the market, how many showings, and how many offers. Okay. Look, if you've been on the market 60 days and you've had 4 showings and this is your first offer, you can skip that step if you want. That's not compelling. But it's those other scenarios that I really care about where you went on the market on Thursday, you had 18 showings by Saturday, and you have 6 offers. Okay. Um, to me, as an appraiser who cares a lot about my job, that's compelling because at the end of the day, I still have a job to do and I'm going to appraise it for what I think it's worth. But what you are describing to me is a positive market reaction to a list price at this point in time. And that is in almost every case really important to me. So I recommend you do that. And I'll take it a step further. If you really did get 6 written offers, I think you should put those 6 offers in the package that you give to the appraiser. Under that cover letter where you're going to describe the activity you had, I would put those offers in there. And how I handle that, so we're all on the same page. The end of the day is I'm concluding my value. And let's just say I'm coming in at the very high point of my comfort level. I'm going to say, paraphrasing, hey, underwriter, I'm well aware that this valuation is at the high end of the range for this community. It should be noted the appraiser also considered additional factors, including the fact that the listing agent indicated there were 18 showings and 6 offers and provided me all 6 offers. So I was able to view that and form my own conclusions. So I'm not going to tell you that if you're listed at $400,000 and there's a bidding war and now you're at $460,000, I'm not promising you that I'm going to be able to get there based on the information you provide. But it is an argument to maybe reconsider what you're doing, look again at the appreciation adjustments you're making, and potentially, come in higher than maybe you would come in without that information. Okay. I'm sure you'll ask me via chat or chime in if that doesn't make sense. But so those are the first 2 things that I would put together. Um, um, Next up, there's 2 documents that I think you should work to create in most cases. One is a upgrade list. Give me an upgrade list. Give me a list of things that make this house better than most. I should, as an appraiser on my inspection, catch most of those upgrades as I'm walking through each room. But there's 2 reasons I think that upgrade list is helpful. One, I might miss something. I'm almost positive that I'm going to miss the upgraded insulation in your attic. I'm almost positive I'm going to miss that you have a 2-year-old 16 SEER air conditioning unit because I don't look at that stuff particularly closely. So that way you should feel comfortable that I'm not missing that. And second, it's just nice to have a capsulated list of all the things that make this house special. And speaking for me personally, I'll take that list, probably scan it and include it in my appraisal because it helps me tell my story. I want the underwriter to have a full 360-degree perspective about this house, and you can help me get there by providing that list. So consider putting that together. I say this all the time, but if you have mini blinds, Formica counters, and old vinyl floors, you can skip this step. I'll figure out that you have no upgrades. The other thing that's a little different, this document, is I like to see a chronological list of improvements that have been made to the house over time. Okay. And I know you're at the mercy of the sellers and how well the sellers keep records. Fully understand that. You need to determine how far back you can or want to go comfortably in terms of how far back in time. I probably would try and go at least 5 years back. And the format I like the best is, okay, in 2019, they put on a new roof for $11,000. In 2018, they replaced both air conditioning units at this price range. And, just put that list together. Again, it helps the appraiser tell the story. Um, Sometimes there might be enough information there where the appraiser's like, I'm going to make condition adjustments. Maybe I wasn't going to before, but there's been a lot of things done to this house. I'm going to make upward condition adjustments to some of my comps for that. Pay particularly close attention to kitchen and bathroom items. You don't see this, but there's a place on my form where they ask me specifically, has the kitchen been updated or remodeled? And if so, what time frame? And that's going all the way back 15 years, by the way. And then another pop-up that says, has the bathroom been upgraded or updated or remodeled? And if so, what time frame? So particularly any bathroom or kitchen items that have been updated or improved, I would include that in that information as well. Okay. So the last thing that I would provide in a package that I'm giving to the appraiser is I provide comps. I would always provide comps. I think somewhere between 3 and maybe 8 to 10 comps is probably, the right number. Arbitrary on the high end, because at some point I just lose interest. I don't have a ton of time right now. And if you give me 30 comps, I'm going to react the same when you hand them to me. Oh, that's so nice of you. Thanks for taking the time. But I might not look at any of them because that's just almost unfiltered data. And I really want to focus on the filtered stuff. I want to get down to, here are the best 8 to 10 comps. I wouldn't bring less than 3 comps with you to an appraiser, because you'll never see an appraisal with less than 3 comps. And if you give me 1 comp, what I've found over time is that just kind of means you can't find anything else to support your contract price. And that puts us in a tough spot. I would focus on sales from the last 3 or 4 months as much as possible. I think generally speaking, appraisers gravitate towards more recent data. Now more than ever, they should be, because again, the market's going up like this. And if I'm using a sale 6 months ago and property values have gone up 20% since then, that would be a big adjustment to account for the appreciation. You're just better off not using that sale. I'm not going to tell you I don't use some sales over 3 months old. I do, but there's a reason for it usually. And I am focusing now, seriously, more than ever in my 30 years, I'm focusing on trying to find recent stuff for sure. So I'd focus on that. Let's talk for a second about how I run my searches for comps, because I think that's a good way for you to do it. I'm a big location first guy. Like, the most important thing about pretty much any house I've ever looked at is, where is it? Other things matter, but my first search in MLS and county records is really locationally specific. And so what I do is I run actives, your 18 categories of pending, and closed sales within the last year in my subdivision. Don't freak out. Doesn't mean I want to use a sale that's 10 months old, but it's really hard to have a good understanding about my location and how the market reacts to my location, immediate location, if I don't at least have 1 comp in that same immediate location. So the other reason I want you to do this, actives, pending, solds in my subdivision in a year, I don't want you to miss anything, okay? Too often, I think, realtors are so fixated on the contract price that they miss data that's really good that the appraiser won't miss. And what I mean by that is, you're an escrow at $480,000. The house next door sold 2 days ago for $420,000. If you're only focused on sales that sold for $480,000 and higher, you won't see that, which means you won't give that to the appraiser. which means you missed your opportunity to tell the appraiser why your house is better than that comp that sold for 420. Does that make sense? I hope so. Um, so a little key for you is, in almost all cases, I don't put a sales price in my search frame. Okay, appraisers shouldn't. And the only time I do that is I did an inspection on a $3 million house yesterday. I did put a sales price parameter of $1 million and up, just because I knew there was no chance I was going to use a sale of a $600,000 house for this house. So, but generally speaking, I think it's bad practice to run searches for comps with sales price as a parameter. Okay, because again, I think too often a realtor is missing information that the appraiser won't miss. So active pending solds in your immediate subdivision, couple caveats on that. If you're in a master planned subdivision, like McDowell Mountain Ranch or something, where if you do that, you're going to get hundreds of properties. In those cases, I would narrow it down to my specific phase and or my specific builder, because then you want your frame of reference like right there in those cases. Also, if you're not in a subdivision, like you have a meets and bounds property you're appraising, I might put a bookend map in there, but obviously you can't put in a subdivision in that case. All right, so that's my search number one. My search number two, I understand we've all heard about using comps within a mile. And I think there's some relevance to that. But for me, I'm a huge neighborhood guy. Okay. Let me look at the MLS map and say, this is my neighborhood. And sometimes that is the 1 mile section. And sometimes it's a broader area. Like if I'm in core Arcadia, that's going to be 44th Street to Camelback to 68th Street to the canal north of Indian School Road. That's well beyond a mile. So you want to look at the map and decide, okay, these are the boundaries that I think a typical buyer who's looking at my house, where else would they look? Okay. And so after you put your boundaries in, and again, they might be over a mile, start putting a square footage parameter. I would start maybe at like plus or minus 15%. You can expand or reduce those parameters depending on how much data shows up. But I think 15% is probably a good starting point. You could put a lot size parameter in there. You could put a year built parameter. And so then that next search is going to be kind of a hybrid of, okay, I've got my neighborhood, but now I'm putting some specifics about the house in those parameters. So that's my second search. Those are the two core searches that I do really every time. Any searches I do after that are really specific to the subject property. Like the appraisal that I'm going to after we finish this call had a guest house. So one of the searches I ran was give me comps only that have guest houses, okay? If you have a basement, run a search just for basement comps, okay? Other things that I would search for, if I'm on a golf course or on a lake or backing the mountain preserve, or on an elevated lot with a city-like view, or I back a busy street. Those are all scenarios where I would go into MLS and I would look specifically for properties that fit those criteria, because those are important also. If I'm a fix and flip remodel, I'm going to go searching for other houses that have newly updated kitchens or have remodel listed in the commentary. And then when you're done with that, I would look and make an assessment. Okay, what are the best 6, 8, 10 sales in that, in those bunchings of comparables? And then I think the format that I like to see as an appraiser is give me the 1-page Plano, okay? And maybe in the top right corner, give me some notes. Is there anything you know about that house that maybe I can't find in MLS? Maybe you were in that house and you have some unique specific insight that might have impacted the sales price. I would put those in the notes, and I wouldn't just hand that to the appraiser. I would maybe pull out a comp. Hey, I know you're going to see this comp sold $30,000 less than ours. But here's what I can tell you about that house. Okay. I think that's all really helpful. And I think that probably is the best advice I could give as to how to develop information and provide really good, useful information to the appraiser. Another reason I think you guys should meet the appraiser at the inspection is there's some recent phenomenon going on that I can't stand, and I think it's just a sad commentary about my industry. Some appraisers aren't measuring houses. I don't know. I don't know how to do show of hands, but I would love to know if any of you guys have ever had an inspection where the appraiser didn't measure. It's that to me seems so ridiculously lazy. I can't believe it's happening, but I know it's happening because I hear it from realtors, and I'm now seeing it more than I've ever seen it before, where I'm reviewing somebody's appraisal and the sketch in the appraisal exactly matches the county record sketch. That never happens. That happens to me like once a month, where the county, and that's on a rectangular house. So you need to make sure these appraisers are measuring the houses. You should care about that because more often than not, probably like 75% of the time, my measurements are larger than what the county record shows. And, that's impactful. If the county shows this 2,000 square feet and I measure it 2,075 square feet, that is going to lead to potentially additional value. And you want to make sure that the appraisal reflects that. What else do I have? Just a couple more things, and then I'm kind of out of what I really wanted to say today. But I do want to talk a little bit about the COVID protocol and how it's impacting appraisals. COVID protocol, what that means is there are temporary arrangements in place that allow, in certain circumstances, for the appraisal inspection to be waived. I want to be clear. I'm not saying the appraisal being waived. That's an entirely different thing, and it makes me sad when I talk about it, so I don't want to talk about it. But there are now scenarios where if a party to the transaction vocalizes that they're not comfortable with the appraiser going inside a house because of some COVID-related concern, the loan officer can apply to get the inspection waived, okay? The appraiser is still doing an appraisal. They're just not getting into the house and they're not measuring. The reason I want to make you aware of that is I think that that is most likely going to lead to a conclusion that might be in error, and in error potentially not to your favor. Again, when I go out to a house, I'm taking all my own notes. It's all my own insight, and I feel very comfortable with that information. Also, again, I'm measuring the house, and most of the time, my measurements come out larger than what the county says. If you take that inspection away from me, I'm going to go with what the county says, not even what MLS says. I'm going to probably go with what the county record shows the square footage at, which can cost you some value. And I think generally speaking, appraisers are a little more hesitant to make adjustments for things like upgrades and remodeling and condition related components if they're not the one making the observations themselves. So my kind of general rule of thumb is unless your house is kind of nasty, your listing is kind of nasty, unkept, in below average condition, you really should benefit from a full inspection, meaning that I would let all parties know ahead of time that you do not want to waive the inspection. Okay, so what I would do if I were you, unless your house is not nice, I would make sure the loan officer knows I will find a way to get the appraiser access to the property. We do not want to waive the inspection. And if the appraiser is trying to get the waiver, then can we reassign it to another appraiser? Because that's what happens. So just again, let me back up for a second. If the seller is high risk, or is just really nervous about COVID, or as a family member that's high risk, or is feeling sick, they can say, hey, we can't let the appraiser in. What are the options? But also the appraiser can say, I don't feel that great today, or I'm high risk. I don't want to do the interior inspection. Can I get a waiver on that? So you might not even know that they're asking for a waiver if the appraiser just goes directly to the loan officer. So again, I would vocalize to all parties involved that you will help make sure that appraiser gets that inspection. And I think you'll be better off. The last thing is, I'm thinking about it, there's something you can do that I would appreciate right now. Like today, I had one inspection this morning and I have 5 still today. It's a long day. I'm probably doing 3 to 6 inspections a day. That's too many. We're all so ridiculously busy. The reason I'm telling you this is I'm not a paranoid person, but I do know that every time I go into somebody's house, there's at least a little bit of risk that I can get myself sick. And if I can get myself sick, I can get my wife sick or my 4 kids sick. And I don't want to do that. I really don't want to get COVID. So there's things you can do, I think, that will really strengthen the professional relationship we have. And I think the appraiser will appreciate. And that is, get there, get to that inspection before the appraiser does, and let's get the sellers out of the house if you can. Normally, I don't care. I'm one of the few appraisers that actually likes interacting with human beings. But maybe not as much now as during normal times. And so it's nice for me. I appreciate it when the sneezing seller's kids are getting in a car and going to Starbucks for 45 minutes. And the realtor has gotten there a little early, turned on all the lights, opened all the doors, and steps back 6 feet or whatever when I show up. I just appreciate it now. And I think that's a really nice way to start off the interaction, and maybe view your meeting with the appraiser as you would if you were getting the house ready to show a prospective buyer. Okay. So Kelly and everyone on the call, I kind of covered everything I think that I meant to. I'm a little out of practice because I took a couple weeks off over the holidays, but I am happy to answer any questions or bid everybody a great day.
I have a question for you, Jay. So I have a listing that's going to be coming up, and the lady's a contractor. She's put so much money into it. Like it has everything, okay, crown molding, everything you can think of. When we added up all the upgrades that she's done, it was, like 250K. So
what price range is the house? Like what price range?
600.
Okay, she did kind of a lot.
Yeah, she did a lot. But then when I'm pulling up all the comps, like houses that are not as updated, but they have like a really nice pool, are coming like 100K below what she's wanting to list it for.
Yeah.
So
that's a dangerous situation from an appraisal perspective. You might have a circumstance where the appraiser determines that the house is over improved for the neighborhood, meaning that so cost and value aren't the same thing. We have to agree with that. Okay. Where we run the most risk that cost is way above value is when somebody goes crazy in a neighborhood that maybe crazy is not appropriate. Does that make sense? So I, as the appraiser, my first search is going to be, give me the best stuff in the neighborhood. And if you're at 600 and these comps are in the 400s, that's a red flag to me and the appraiser that, hey, maybe we're over improved. So after I'm done with the subdivision and I go to that larger neighborhood area, I am going to try and focus on finding other houses that are highly remodeled and upgraded, and see how the market's reacted to those. But I do worry that's a scenario where you might have an appraisal issue. And what those are, what I would suggest on something like that
Mm-hmm.
is maybe you start at the seller's expectation and say, let's just give it a week. In this market, if a house doesn't sell in a week, it's overpriced. And so we'll start high so that you don't have to sleep at night knowing we didn't try. But if it doesn't sell in a week, we need to get more realistic. And the other thing, and I'm not here to sell my own wares, even though I'd love for you all to use me all the time, is maybe an appraisal is not a bad part of the listing process for you. One, again, we measure the house and maybe it measures larger, which would help you. And then otherwise, it's a second neutral set of eyes that might be telling the seller, hey, that's just not realistic. And that might help you keep your listing, right? Like you say, hey, we'll give it a week. If it doesn't sell, let's order an appraisal. And let's kind of really take a look at it. So those are the suggestions I have. But yeah, $200,000 in remodeling in a $400,000 neighborhood is a little alarming to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Good luck on that.
Thanks.
Anything else? You guys gonna go easy on me today? I never get out of here early.
Hey, I got a good one for you. So
I'll be the judge of that. Just
Give me the judge of that. So I'm finally getting a decent amount of showings. There's just no other inventory. But I have a house that it's $880,000 price range in Cave Creek. It was the model home in a small subdivision 15 years ago. Subsequent to that, the city of Phoenix decided to, in the middle of their land, 75 to 100 feet from this house, build a big water storage well and tank and wall and a cell tower. So, you know, people love the house. They go, but I can't live at the cell tower. I mean, they don't want to give the house away.
Yeah.
You just keep, I mean, we're getting now 2-3 showings a week. So we're getting reasonable showings for a $900,000 house. You just wait for that person that moves from California that used to live up against the freeway and goes, oh, that's nothing. I mean, you have a 180-degree backyard view of which four degrees is spoiled by this monster cell tower.
Yeah, well,
But it's not.
How big's the lot, by the way? I can't remember if you told me that.
15 to 17,000.
Yeah, so that,
The house,
go ahead.
yeah, the house has a pool in the backyard. It's not a very deep backyard, and then the city's property starts.
So it's really a tough
3
call.
years ago, I said, plant some trees. He tried to call the city. They wouldn't talk to him. So unfortunately, he's from Oregon, and he thinks trees grow fast. All trees grow fast. So he goes, why do I need to spend, I told him plant 36-inch box trees. He bought the 15-gallon, $29 Palo Verde, and they're still thinking about growing.
So that's it's a tough scenario. So first, I just want to talk about one part about what you said first. You said, should I wait for the specific buyer? And I'm really glad you said that, because I want to be clear that when somebody does an appraisal, they're appraising for the typical buyer. And I just want to differentiate that there.
Okay.
And an example I would use is like a 10-car garage. Okay.
Right.
For the appraiser, we're trying to decide what would a typical buyer pay that could afford this house, could afford this neighborhood. What would they pay for that 10-car garage? And that number is probably substantially less than the specific buyer who's a car guy who needs a 10-car garage. And
Gotcha.
It's a trade-off, because when you're waiting for that specific buyer, often your marketing times are going to expand because the number of buyers contracts, if that makes sense.
Right.
So appraisals should never be prepared for a specific buyer. We're always looking at the typical buyer. And I would guess in this price point, the fact that your listing is still on the market, that's pretty, in relative terms for Cave Creek, that's a pretty low price point.
Right.
I would venture to say that tower and water station is really materially impacting the marketability. And what I would do, I don't think it's likely that this would bear fruit, but if I were doing an appraisal on that house, I would look at any other houses that are contiguous to that tower. And if I got so lucky to find any sales, I would doubt I'd be able to in this case. but that's the first thing I would do is let me look around that tower and see if any other of these have sold, and let me try and extrapolate how the market reacted in that case to the tower. So that's the first thing I would do. Second thing I would do is, okay, I can't find anything with that exact external obsolescence. What else is around that maybe is similar? Are there any higher tension power lines or backing a busy street? I would try and find some other transaction that maybe had somewhat similar, again, external obsolescence, adverse locational issue, and try and see how the market reacted in those cases. My gut feeling from hearing you talk is you are well aware that this is impactful, and you know
I have it in the description. I said the elephant in the room is there's a cell tower, but it's a beautiful house. I mean, I got tired of people going out thinking they were being surprised, so I put it in the description.
Yeah, so I think that it's hard to try and come up with a percentage, like what's the impact of that. The reality is the higher the price point, the more impactful an adverse condition like that is. And I say it this way: if somebody can afford an $850,000 house, they can afford not to be contiguous to a cell tower. And so that's what you're running into. I don't have a useful answer as to how impactful it is, other than it seems like you're starting to realize what the house is not, what the market is rejecting, which is your current list price. And that's another one. Again, I don't give advice to just try and get work, but that might be one where an appraisal makes some sense. You have somebody who maybe is a little out of touch, maybe they're callous to what this view is because they were used to looking at it. And maybe a third party appraiser saying, here's what we think the impact is, might get them more realistic. But good luck. That's a tough scenario.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day. Kelly, I think, is this it for the crowd?
Yeah, I think so. Everyone's pretty quiet. Hopefully it
All
was
right.
valuable. I'm gonna go back and take notes on a bunch of things you said and do a little sharing of the key points with the brokerage. Yeah, but
So let me do this. I'm going to give you guys my our office phone number, and I'll even give you my cell number. If you have any appraisal related questions, I do my best to try and help answer them. The office number is 602-955-4050. My cell number is 602-290-8121. And, you know, we spend a lot of time, we have a whole realtor division. We spend a lot of time trying to be a resource for you guys. And especially in this time, I'm a failed realtor, and I thought my job was tough when I just had to find a house for a buyer and then they made an offer and they bought it. And what you guys are faced with now, where you're competing with 4, 5, 6 other offers sometimes, I don't envy you. It's a tough job. And then you get it in escrow, you're the winning bid, and then the appraisal comes in 6% below contract price. So it certainly is tough. But I thank you for the time. I'm a huge fan of Kelly and my home group, and always happy to help anybody I can on this call.
awesome. Thank you so much, Jay.
Cool. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.